Welcome to Best of Reddit. Be sure to subscribe as we upload new content daily. When I was in university, I'd heard stories about horrible landlords of student housing but hadn't experienced it myself. Until third year, when it felt like we got 3 years worth of crappy landlords all in one go. It began when I heard noises in the wall behind my bed at night. I brushed it off for a while until I realized that it was an animal in the wall. I told the landlords the next day, and they immediately played dumb, acting as if I was stupid in front of my housemates for suggesting that something could fit inside of a wall. That was the first alarm bell. Why immediately try to embarrass me into dropping it? After explaining that I know what a cavity wall is, she asked if we'd seen anything in the kitchen, oddly specific. We didn't think about it until later. From then on, her husband dealt with us. We weren't aware that he was our landlord too. A little time passes, still nothing done about the noise in my wall, not that it was a surprise. I'd worked out by then that it was probably something like a mouse, and that it could run through the terrace of houses, as long as it didn't chew its way through my wall or die in there. I put the whole thing on the back burner. Until we were all sat in the sitting room, and heard a thud in the kitchen. Then squeaking. There was a giant rat in our kitchen. The rat disappeared into a hole in that completely crumbling kitchen wall, and the landlord claimed that we made it up, and that they'd never had a rodent problem. I contacted the previous tenants through Facebooking names I found on letters for them that had been posted to us by mistake. The property had had a rat problem for the last 3 years before we moved in at least. I set a rat trap and caught one, took photos, and sent them to the landlord to tell him to sort the problem out. He told us that because there was a line in our contract about the landlord not paying for pest control, the contract specified wasps' nests, etc. We didn't even think about rats when we signed it, that we'd have to pay the hundreds of pounds to fix it. He'd knowingly written that into our contract so he wouldn't have to pay out, instead of fixing the kitchen wall and the exterior wall where the rats were getting in. To cut the rest of the setting the scene part of the story short, we called the council, who sent a pest control team. While on their visit, one of the men took my housemate to one side and told her that our landlord is evil and he is known for getting nasty. They told him that it wasn't our fault that there were rats, it was his, and he screamed in my face until he was bright red about how I was a terrible person and was trying to take him down for no reason. One of my housemates had to leave because she was scared. I wasn't. We were in a room full of men, who were backing us up, making himself look worse for screaming in my face like that. I'm female and was 22 at the time, about half his size. He tried to sue us for slander. It isn't slander if it's true, so swing and a miss. Now, for the revenge. It was written into our contract that we had to be notified 24 hours in advance if anyone needed access to the house, which included house viewings. I began my mission: stop any other students from getting stuck in this hellhole. The house was being shown by agents, so it made it fairly easy. I left the rat traps in prominent places, casually explaining why we needed them if asked, and if I felt I was being too subtle, making a fake show of, "Oh gosh, please ignore the rat traps." The landlord said he'd fix the kitchen wall where they get in but hasn't gotten around to it, so we have to catch them. I was honest about the mold problem in the bathroom. When I found out they were planning on increasing the rent by £100 a month, I made a point of saying something like, "Well, it's just about worth the rent I was paying." I made sure to say his name, so they wouldn't get away with using his wife's name as a front while his reputation for aggression stayed hidden. The agents never said anything to me directly, and because we had to be notified, I could always make sure I was home when there was a viewing. My housemates fully supported my revenge, but I was the woman of action in the house. When I'm sure I'm in the right, I will do what's necessary to make things right. That was until they tried to turn up unannounced one day, not even knocking, just unlocked our front door and walked in. Luckily I was in the house, and kicked them out for not informing us, and told them that they were in breach of our contract. If the crappy landlord could use it to beat us with, two can play at that game. No new tenants had signed for the house by the time we were free of that hellhole. It's been 2 years now though, so I have no idea what happened to the rat house. For our next ProRevenge story today, we have one titled, "Good Luck Paying for the Car." Let's get to it. So this isn't my story, it happened to a friend of a friend, so exact details are difficult to get, but this is what I was told. For ease of story and to hide identities, the names I will use are Jack and Jill. Bit of backstory. Jack and Jill had been going out for nearly 5 years by the point of this story. A year prior, Jill lost her job due to the company she worked for being liquidated. Money got tight for Jill, so Jack offered to help by covering her car payments, monthly installment, road tax, insurance and fuel, so she could put the money she got to rent and utilities until she got a new job and was financially stable. Jack had a fairly decent job, so wasn't a strain on his income. A year goes by and Jill is still unemployed, but not through rejections. She got lazy and just spent all day doing nothing around her house whilst Jack was at work. One day Jack gets off work early and decides to surprise Jill on the way back home, but as he is approaching her house he sees another car in her driveway. He parks on the street and sneaks up to the house and looks through the window to see Jill with another man. Jack was peeved, but he didn't burst in there. He walked away, got into his car and drove off. When Jack got home he did a little digging and found out who the guy was through Facebook, and found she had been having an affair for half a year with this guy. He was now really peeved and wanted revenge, and he knew the best way to do it. This is where the revenge come in. Jill loved her car even though she barely used it, so what Jack did was stop all the payment that were going out of his bank account and put them onto her account. As the car was in her name, it was easy to do. As the payments had only just gone out, he had to wait for the end of the month for his revenge to unfold. The end of the month comes and Jill's bank card is declined at the shops. She calls the bank up to find out what is going on, and they tell her she has gone overdrawn because of the car payments going out her account. Jill phoned Jack and asked why the payment is coming out of her accounts and not his. Jack coldly replied, "'Cause I know you cheated on me and I'm not gonna pay for my ex-girlfriend's car," and hung up. Fall out of the revenge, she tried to get Jack to pay for the car, even got lawsuits involved, but as she was the sole owner of the car it was declared he had no legal responsibility to pay for her car. As she couldn't afford her road tax or insurance, she couldn't drive the car, and eventually she got so far behind in the payments the car was repossessed. To pay the debt she had to get a minimum wage job and now takes the bus to and from work.